Flight LA-432 from New York to Rio de Janeiro was cruising smoothly at 35,000 feet. The passengers were relaxed, enjoying the in-flight entertainment and sipping their drinks, until a masked man suddenly stood up, pulled out a gun, and shouted, "Nobody move! This plane is under our control." The cabin erupted into chaos. Passengers screamed, and some tried to call for help, but the hijackers were too quick. Three heavily armed men, dressed in black, moved swiftly to take control of the plane. They forced the pilot to change course, heading toward a secret airstrip deep in the Amazon jungle. Their plan was to land, refuel, and escape with hostages. But what they didn't know was that among the passengers sat a retired military officer, Captain Ryan Walker. Ryan had spent years in special operations, conducting high-risk missions and training for scenarios just like this. As the hijackers took control, Ryan's instincts kicked in immediately. He carefully studied the hijackers, noting their weapons, movements, and communication patterns. He whispered a plan to the flight attendants, using their help to distract the hijackers and gather vital information. One attendant, Maria, was particularly brave. She pretended to be hysterical, drawing the attention of two hijackers. Meanwhile, Ryan used the opportunity to slip into the lavatory and retrieve a small device from his pocket, a portable GPS tracker. He quickly activated the device, sending a distress signal to the authorities. But the hijackers were getting suspicious. One of them approached Ryan, gun pointed at his head. "What are you doing?" he growled. Ryan remained calm, using his training to defuse the situation. "I'm just looking for a bag," he said, slowly standing up. The hijacker hesitated, then backed off, distracted by Maria's continued hysterics. As the plane began descending toward the jungle airstrip, Ryan knew it was time to act. He whispered a final instruction to Maria, who nodded and moved to the front of the cabin. With a deep breath, Ryan launched his surprise attack. He took down the first hijacker with a swift kick, then moved on to the second. The two men crashed to the floor, struggling and punching. Ryan fought back, using his military training to overpower them. Meanwhile, the pilot executed a brilliant trick, a sudden altitude drop, making the last hijacker lose balance. Ryan took advantage of the momentary distraction to disarm the hijacker and pin him to the floor. The plane was now careening out of control, but the pilot quickly regained control, pulling the aircraft away from the dangerous landing. The passengers erupted into cheers as Ryan stood up, panting, his eyes scanning the cabin for any remaining threats. The pilot's voice came over the intercom, calm and steady. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've regained control of the plane. We'll be landing safely at Rio's main airport, where authorities will be waiting to take the hijackers into custody." As the plane touched down on the runway, Ryan felt a mix of emotions: relief, adrenaline, and a hint of sadness. He knew that his actions had saved countless lives, but he also knew that he'd have to live with the memories of the fight forever. The authorities rushed onto the plane, surrounding the hijackers and taking them into custody. Ryan, however, simply walked away, disappearing into the crowd. He knew that his work was done, and that he'd always stand ready to defend those in harm's way. The passengers, still shaken but grateful, began to disembark. Maria, the brave flight attendant, approached Ryan, her eyes shining with tears. "Thank you, Captain," she whispered. "We owe you our lives." Ryan smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Just doing my job, ma'am," he said before turning and walking away, lost in the crowd.